Thank you so much, Juliana, for that wonderful introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a unique honor to be asked to speak with you today. So leadership is the topic of this gathering. The word leadership is pretty loaded for me, actually. It was often used around my family as I was growing up, in and around my family. I was born into a family of leaders. Both my grandfathers built and led extremely large businesses. Both my grandmothers are philanthropic leaders. My father led that company that my grandfather started and many other companies and efforts as well. My mother was and is involved in political leadership, and all of my aunts and uncles are involved in one way or another in leading organizations and efforts that involve everything from real estate to sports teams to cars to boats to ice cream to special forces platoons. So to be honest, it was and continues to be somewhat intimidating. So to be asked to share my lessons in leadership actually feels a bit odd and distinctly like I should be the last person that signed up for this gig. The truth is, when I get an invitation to speak to any group, it comes as a surprise. Public talks are not something that I seek out, and I actually find the experience, particularly the week leading up to it, uniquely unpleasant. Though the anticipation, I find, is the worst part, and the adrenaline rush afterwards is a mild salve. When it comes down to it, I'm an introverted, recently turned 30-year-old who's interested in starting slightly odd projects and much happier in a quiet room with a book than with a microphone and a spotlight on a stage. In the past few years, however, I have had the privilege of leading several projects that have made impacts, and all those have required me to, one degree or another, to put aside that introversion, put it on the back burner, suck it up, get out there, share an idea or an opportunity I believed in, and get obsessed about figuring out a way to make it reality. So while I don't have experience leading large enterprises or decades-old institutions, and I don't have my grandfather's gift for speaking and motivation, I have started a few things, and I think that the subset of leadership that we can call entrepreneurship is crucial for the future of our city, our state, and our nation. The reason I believe this is simple. I'm selfish. What I mean by this is that I want to live in a place that is full of interesting things to do. I want to be surprised by the things that people create. I want to benefit from the fact that I'm not the smartest person in pretty much any room I walk into, except perhaps when I'm changing my daughter's diaper, and even that's probably debatable and certainly going to change in the not-too-distant future. I think the likelihood of all those things increases directly with how many people are pursuing their own unique dreams, visions, and goals. And the more we seek that diversity in those efforts. We're all better off when more people are starting things, and I get super, super excited when people are trying new things, getting traction, and changing how we live for the better. So although it's weird for me to share my thoughts as if I'm some sort of guru, there are a few simple things that I think I've learned over the past few years that I think are important to keep in mind in the leadership of starting, the leadership of entrepreneurship. They're pretty simple. You need a good idea and goal more than a good plan. You need to be brave. And you need to know that no matter what, there will be trolls. So ideas, goals, and plans. I think there's something here in the culture in West Michigan, in Michigan in general, in the Midwest, that loves and depends on plans and planning. We use planning to death. My theory is that this has to do with the results of the incredible success of the industrial model that grew so strongly here and provided such abundance in the 20th century. Factories and mass production require massive, intricate forecasting and planning. And without a doubt, plans are absolutely critical when you're trying to get things done. They mitigate risks, they help us economize, they coordinate large numbers of people by giving them their marching orders. They make us feel like we're doing real work and when we're executing them. But the problems come, though, when our desire for plans demands proof and we think that we can plan things that are inherently unplannable. In fact, Roger L. Martin, the dean of the Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto, puts it very plainly that the enemy of innovation is the phrase, prove it. We had no proof that ArtPrize would be anything interesting or worthwhile. We had no proof that anyone would be interested in sharing different ideas they had on a monthly basis. We had no proof that anyone would be interested in buying water in minimalist paper cartons. And if you don't mind, I'm going to open this one here a sec. We just had hunches and tried to organize things in a way that got after those original goals. And we had to stay fluid. When you're starting something new, there will inevitably be changes along the way because it is impossible to make a plan that takes every variable into account. To attempt to do so would be a frustrating exercise in make-believe and gear grinding. So a cultural event in downtown Grand Rapids that would result in everyone getting excited about creative expression, a show and tell night. The first of these goals started out with a plan that called for a film festival, and eventually it morphed into ArtPrize. The other started out with a plan for an open mic night, and it turned into a simple, structured event with a real fixation on the number 5 that we call 5x5 night. In a lot of ways, a new idea is like a shark. As an entrepreneur trying to bring it into being, you need to keep moving forward through the water to keep the oxygen moving over the gills and to remain buoyant. My second thought is that you need to be brave. I say bravery here, but it's really a whole class of words: fortitude, tenacity, nerve, daring, etc. This is not surprising. There are literally reams of books that have that talk about the need for these things in entrepreneurship, and they do it with far more eloquence than I could ever hope for. But I think it's worth saying and reflecting on the thought that part of bravery is making peace with the fact that failure is more likely than it's not. This is why it's important that when you're pursuing something new, it's best to architect things so that if everything goes completely to hell, you'll be able to survive, adjust, and try again. Little bets. The calculus for this is extremely specific to every individual. Was survivable to a college-age kid, 4 a.m. hackathons fueled by ramen, college houses, and you all know what I mean by that, is less survivable for your average 45-year-old. But the main lesson is that we should be good gamblers and avoid putting all of our chips, whatever they may be, on red. For further reading on this, I'd actually suggest Adapt by Tim Harford and Little Bets by Peter Sims. In building that tenacity, bravery, and daring, I've also found that it helps the more you realize that pretty much everything new usually seems stupid at first to most people. Not only that, but most people will persist in seeing it as stupid, impossible, or a toy right up until the moment they see it as genius or inevitable. There are example after example. Less than 10 years before the Wright brothers flew, Lord Kelvin declared that heavier-than-air flying machines were impossible. Literally months before their first flight, the prevailing opinion of expert aerodynamicists was that maybe in 10 million years we would be capable of building a craft, heavier-than-air craft capable of flight. Cars were seen as goofy toys for dandies and eccentrics for literally years. There are a slew of hilarious articles from the 90s talking about that internet fad, and won't it be nice when that goes away? You don't really have to look back that far, actually. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. In fact, the closer you get to present day, the easier it is to see the phenomenon as people initially dismiss and eventually embrace as inevitable. I highly recommend reading The Innovators Dilemma by Clayton Christensen to learn about what disruptive innovations are and how they're almost always dismissed by incumbents when they first emerge. Finally, there will be trolls. I think Seth Godin put this idea in particularly effective words in a blog post a few weeks ago called The Mathematical Impossibility of Universal Delight. And I'd like to read it to you a minute. Jack Nicholson calls it rabbit ears. If you're hyper-aware of what others are thinking, if you're looking for criticism, the unhappy audience member and the guy who didn't get the joke, you will always find what you're seeking. For it to be any other way, you'd either have to be invisible or performing to a totally homogeneous audience. Invisible is an option, of course. You can lay low, not speak up, and make no difference to anyone. That's sort of like dividing by zero, though. You'll get no criticism, but no delight either. As for finding a homogeneous audience, good luck with that. The one thing that's true of all people is that they're different from one another. What delights one enrages the other, part of the deal. This is probably one of the biggest and most unexpected lessons I've learned over the past few years of trying new things. Literally within minutes of announcing ArtPrize, there were people commenting about how it was the dumbest / most offensive / most horrible thing in the world. My trolls in particular seem to be old, angry, and irrelevant men who nurse long-running, obsessive political conspiracy theories based on my family's politics. At first these people bothered me and were honestly a distraction, but eventually I got to a place where I simply laugh at their impotent rage. The thing that helped me most was, like Godin points to, the realization that this was the inevitable byproduct of people actually paying attention to something I was doing. Additionally, I made a conscious effort to accept the appreciation that other people showed me for my work and to be filled up by the satisfaction of watching people enjoy it overall. what I think are far more difficult barbs to take than the rantings of the internet loons are actually the ones that come from the other real leaders. You usually think they would be at the very least neutral parties because both of you are actually doing things and trying to move things forward. You're both in the thick of battle against the status quo in general. But as entrepreneurs and leaders, we can actually be the worst form of troll for other entrepreneurs and leaders. Obviously, there's a place for critique and competition. However, I challenge every one of us to really think long and hard about the commentary we offer on other leaders' efforts to make something new happen and whether it's truly productive. Call it entrepreneur esprit de corps. I think that having a positive, productive culture amongst our entrepreneurial leaders instead of a crabs in a bucket one is really crucial for building a successful entrepreneurial ecosystem. So plans, bravery, and trolls, these are some basic thoughts on being an entrepreneurial leader. I hope they're helpful to you as you take the next step as leaders and shepherds of new ideas because our city, state, and nation need you. Again, nothing gives me a bigger charge than to build platforms for other people to pursue their own unique visions. And I'm actually close to announcing a new project that will continue that theme. And I'm definitely in that place of wavering back and forth between thoughts of, wow, this is an exciting idea. I can't wait to launch it. And my goodness, this is a horrible idea. What on earth am I doing? Which is exactly what happens before launching any new idea. So I guess there's one more thought to throw in, is that launching new things gets easier in some ways the more you do it, but in others, particularly in dealing with self-doubt, it's just as hard every time. But I guess that's all just part of the fun. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I wish you best in your future endeavors as leaders. I'd be happy to take some questions actually now.
You mentioned that you like to read books. Are you thinking about writing any books?
I've had the thought before, but again, I'm really not comfortable with the whole idea of myself as some sort of guru. So, yeah, I don't consider myself a guru on that though. So, maybe 30 years from now, we'll see if books even exist then.
So, sorry, I don't know what that was. Anyways, I just woke up. You said you're working on something new right now. When can we expect to hear some sort of press release or some sort of
end of the month?
What's that?
End of the month.
Sweet, sounds good.
This is Dallas, everyone. Actually, Dallas was one of our 5x5 night winners for the the Grand Rapids Beer Co-op. So,
first of all, thank you for your innovation. Because for some of us who are missing living in New York and Chicago and wondering how God plopped us in Grand Rapids area, you're one of the breaths of fresh air. So thank you. So Frederick Buechner said, the place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meets. So I'll read it again. The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. Can you say more of where that is for you? I think we get a sense in terms of the creativity, but you certainly come from a lot of creativity. And I guess I'm also thinking in terms of poverty issues, justice issues.
Yeah, I guess I just love creating opportunities for people to be creative themselves, and you can lump that all under investment, and investment can come in many forms. It's not all just financial capital. There's social capital, there's relational capital, there's intellectual capital, all these types of ways that we can invest. So I love thinking of ways to build systems for people to invest in each other, invest in themselves, and so it's everything from sort of microfinance and enabling people to run with businesses to mentorship programs and spending time with folks. I actually was a mentor at Burton Elementary for a number of years. So, yeah.
First of all, I wanted to tell you I've really enjoyed ArtPrize, and I can't wait for the next one. Will you go into how this all started, where you got the idea, how it evolved the way it did?
Yeah. So ArtPrize started life as a film festival. I alluded to that a little bit. Originally, I spent a lot of time in a prior project going to film festivals and always thought that Grand Rapids would be a great place to host a film festival. I always loved sort of the conversational nature of a film festival. Films are so accessible. Everybody likes to go see a movie and then immediately talk about it with each other. So that sort of buzz that happens at a film festival I just find intoxicating. So we started to plan a film festival and realized pretty quickly that everybody does a film festival. There's a film festival every single weekend somewhere in the United States. So it's literally impossible to differentiate yourself. So we thought, what can achieve the same sort of buzz and conversation, but actually opens it up further, so you don't have to just have dark, quiet rooms with good sight lines to experience the work, but what if it's just about broader creative expression, and architecting things in such a way so that it could just flood the city in every kind of nook and cranny that people could discover or enliven. And so that was really kind of the genesis of it, was how could we do that? I was really intrigued with prize models. The X Prize was an inspiration for that, and the idea of putting an incentive that everybody understands out there, and that sets a general direction of how a basic rule set works, and then just letting people get creative around it. So that's where it started. Got to the public vote because if that idea was to have conversation, and with film festivals, people are voting with their butts in seats at screenings. How can we do that same sort of thing with this new thing? So that's kind of where it came from.
It's good. I liked what you had to say about adapting, and I was wondering maybe you said it's more important to start with a goal, and then how do you continue to adapt but keep that same goal in mind? And just on that same note, well, I guess that's enough.
Yeah, it's obviously all this is easier said than done from a stage, and even this entire model of me like sharing my wisdom with you is, I think, silly. A little bit. That's not at all. I don't mean to be offensive at all to the institute and what you guys are doing here and stuff, but that's just kind of like where I come from in terms of I'm just not comfortable in that role. So where I mean with adapt and starting to that goal, it's just a general framework to look at things, and I think the most important part about that is making sure that failure is survivable, and not, like I said, it's not about putting all the chips in one basket, but making sure that when things completely blow up, you have resources set aside or relationships that you can rely on to help, figure things out and what the next step can be from that failure. So you can take that failure, turn it into learning, and keep moving towards that goal. Well, I think a specific goal is really good, and again, these are all kind of generalities I'm speaking in. I think a specific goal is good, and but maybe the best way to think about it is a specific goal as a subset of a larger goal. So I just, with ArtPrize, had this larger goal of having a cultural event in Grand Rapids that involved conversation, and that looked like a film festival at first, and we started to plan for a film festival. And when that became clear that that was not the path to go down, the goal shifted, and the plan shifted.
Just a quick question about...
Where are you? Sorry.
Oh,
thanks.
no problem. Just a quick question about motivation in terms of, you were talking about when you start an idea initially, there's a lot of people who downplay it and naysay it and things like that. And I guess my question is, during those rough times, or during those times when, things aren't looking so great, or people are being more negative than positive, what do you do to stay motivated and keep moving forward with your idea? Even when you're thinking about
It's a tricky thing because you want to be receptive to the feedback that you're getting. So there's no specific filter that you can apply, I think, to that whole process. So you need to stay receptive to the feedback that you're getting, but you need to keep in mind that for a lot of folks, they're just not going to get it. And so I think the quicker you can get to a place where you find people that get it and you can start to build that group, that's really what your goal should be, to immediately find people that get it in the earliest stages. That might be a partner in whatever the thing is that you're starting. And then the next layer out from that would be constituents that you're serving or customers that you're getting or something like that. So that's kind of where I'd come from on that, I think.
Rick, I'm an art fan, and so I totally love that project. But one of the things I would say is you've been an incredibly effective team builder, because each project has kept going as you've done what you just alluded to, put the right people around the project and around yourself to free up your time and to keep those going. Can you speak a little bit to your thinking about how you built those teams so that innovation became sustainable?
Oh man, if I had an answer to that, that would be great. I guess I've known for quite some time that I'm not a really disciplined operator. So coming to that realization sooner than later, I think, was crucial, to be able to say it's okay, I can let go of most of these things and trust people to figure it out. I don't have any silver bullets on that, though. I mean, I guess it really just comes down to working with people that you trust and that you can have open lines of communication with. But this is all an ongoing process for me of figuring out how that works and how to work with people. In my ideal world, I'd just sit in a cabin with a fire with a book and not have to actually work with people. I mean that in the best way possible.
Rick, I can't think of anything in Grand Rapids that has actually given me a more delightful experience than ArtPrize. And I wonder, I know that the creativity is great. I love walking around seeing the art. For me, the best part is watching the artists and the dignity that ArtPrize gives them to be able to show their art and actually interact with the public. And I wonder, what is it, can you think and tell us what the most satisfying part about ArtPrize is for you? What moment was it, or?
It's just being amongst it, out in it. That's really the most satisfying for me, clearly. It's just all the sort of stories and interactions and hearing from folks. I don't know how many parents told me, especially after the first year, we were so excited. We took the family down to ArtPrize, and the whole next weekend the kids were in the basement painting and coloring and stuff like that. What the ripple effects of that will be for our city and our region, years from now, it's pretty exciting. So that's really the most satisfying for me, is just being amongst it. Thanks.
I had a question.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could just elaborate on ideas that did not make it off the board, and when do you know to walk away from an idea and not waste more energy on it?
Yeah, so I have a whole parking lot of things that, there's no formula for these things. So it's a matter of I think having a notebook and having that sort of parking lot of things that you're thinking about. Get a Moleskine or something that you can jot things down and carry around with you always. I've never been one to tap things out on the iPhone, but that works for some people too. So it's a matter of seeing what the intersection of your own sort of opportunities are and the resources that are around you with sort of the opportunity in the broader space that you want to go into, whether it's starting a business or starting a nonprofit that's going to serve a specific community, and this need is really, really growing and nobody seems to be addressing it. But those things are always in flux. I mean, based on what your capacity is in terms of time, in terms of knowledge to apply to something. So it's just kind of a constant navigation. It's really kind of like sailing in a way. I'm just making this up off the top of my head. It's just kind of occurring to me, but when you're sailing, you need to go where the wind is kind of taking you, and there's a real connection that when you sail a particular boat for long enough, you can really feel how the boat is moving through the wind. So I think I'd liken it to sailing and kind of feeling how all those forces are moving. Kind of esoteric, but sorry.
Rick, we all like to talk about our kids. So I'm interested in what has been instructive for you, maybe about bravery and risk in becoming a father and thinking about, that next generation.
That's heavy. Yeah, the thing that's really I'm thinking about the most actually with my daughter in particular is education and schools and what that means. What sort of context do I want to have her in? I was really very fortunate growing up to be able to travel a lot with my family, and I would just do my schoolwork basically on my own on those things, and I think that's really what kept me sane through school, was to be able to kind of be on my own and do my own thing and actually learn more from being in other countries and cultures and seeing all these things and building that sort of curiosity than being in a classroom. So I want something that's going to cultivate curiosity in my daughter. I think that's something that we all need to constantly be working on is cultivating that curiosity. So that gets at it a little bit. Yeah.
Rick, I'm wondering, it's been mentioned that it's not only just an art prize and an art fair, but that it's an intellectual and cultural type of thing that you're offering the community, and wondering about books. I know they're going on Kindles and such, but at the same time, has Grand Rapids ever had a book fair, or had you ever thought of having something like maybe a modern version of a book fair or something like that to accompany ArtPrize?
No, I've not had that thought. It is an interesting one, though. I think the whole where books are going and publishing and everything is a fascinating sort of thing. Truth be told, though, I mean, we have our hands full kind of with what we're doing with ArtPrize right now. So, yeah, but thank you.
Hi, I just want to let you know, I worked at Amway for 9 years in corporate marketing and strategy, and had the honor and privilege of hearing your grandfather, and he is one of the best speakers I've ever heard. And I once had to follow your father on stage for a half-hour presentation, and he's really a great speaker as well. But I'm really touched by your humility, and you have amazing potential as a speaker. I
Thank
just
you.
found you, and you're highly motivational. So thank you.
Thank you very much. You're very, very kind.
Rick?
Yeah.
You mentioned a little bit earlier that there's those folks that always aren't going to really get it in regards to whatever project that you're doing. I'm just curious, after ArtPrize has been around for a couple of years now, do you think Grand Rapids, gets it now, given the conversations?
Oh yeah, no question. Yeah. But it was funny though that I don't know how most people that were like actually most of our sponsors and stuff and folks that I knew, family, friends, etc. For months after the first ArtPrize came up, I'm like, we didn't really know what this thing was, but good job. We get it now. That's absolutely true.
Rick, sustainability is an interesting word, and certainly one that for-profit world businesses struggle with. Are you finding it, or do you think you will find it more difficult or easier to sustain ArtPrize?
Oh, that's a good question. We are on the path to sustainability with ArtPrize. We looked at it as kind of a philanthropic startup. So my family would very generously supported it to get the gears spinning on it. And every year the community has supported us more and more. And we're continuing to think about what the model means on more of a national stage. I'm not interested in doing art prizes in other places myself, but it's clear from the questions we continue to get that people really resonate with the approach that we take of letting people get creative, like stepping out of the way. So we've developed ideas and tools and things around that that are useful. So that's what we're kind of exploring, and that's kind of part of our longer term sustainability discussion as well. Yeah.
I had a question about your heritage. I think most of us understand third generation entrepreneur is very unusual, and a family that has stayed in a community is unusual. Could you talk a little bit about, for those of us who have adult children, perhaps some of the keys to being a parent in a community that really nurtures that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny, I couldn't wait to get out of Grand Rapids at the end of high school. Like, I couldn't get away fast enough. But it was getting away at that time that made me realize how special this place was and how important I think it is to be rooted in a place. I think it's so easy for us to get so rootless and move around with such frequency with how job markets are and all these things today, that to be tied to a place is special, and to be invested in that is special. So as far as being a third generation entrepreneur, I mean, I don't know, you can ask my parents about what they did. I guess I would come back to that sort of cultivating that curiosity in me and always making me a part of experiences that they were having, but at the same time making it clear that I would be expected to do things myself in the future, and yeah, simple stuff. But no. Well, thank you so much, everyone. It's great to speak with you.